Hi everyone, my name is Shauna, in case you don't know, and welcome back to another video. I got a ring light, which definitely helps with the quality and lighting of my videos, but I was told I have to wear my glasses all the time now, so we're just gonna have to deal with that glare and hopefully it's not too bad. In today's video, I'm going to be doing my wrap up for the winter edition of the Magical Readathon. In case you don't know, the Magical Readathon was hosted by Book Roast. She had a winter edition this year and she does newts and owls. I haven't had a chance to participate in her newts and owls because I didn't learn about Book Roast until like halfway through the newts this year. So I was excited to take part in the winter edition of the Magical Readathon when it came around. This is annoying me so much, this glare in my glasses. Oh well. Today I'm basically just going to be running through what books I read and the star ratings I gave them. So let's get into this. Most of the books that I read are kids books or smaller books just because I'm a slow reader and I wanted to feel like I accomplished the readathon instead of just like, I don't know, starting it and not finishing the book. But let's get into this. The prompt I got for week 1 was read a book that's over 500 pages. For this I read Readathon by Christopher Paolini. I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. I actually did a whole video review of this book and I'll link it down in the description below. My edition of the book is 517 pages, so it definitely counted for that prompt. I sort of cheated on this one because I had already started reading Readathon before the readathon started, but it's okay because I finished it. Also, I'm just doing the prompts off the top of my head, so it may have been worded like a tiny bit different in the prompts, but I'm pretty sure that I'm wording it good enough that you can understand. For the second week, I read 2 different books, which means that I had 2 different prompts. The first book I read was The Complete Idiot's Guide to the World of Harry Potter by Terry Stauffer. I rated this book 5 out of 5 stars. There was definitely some incorrect information in this book. Off the top of my head, they said that Cedric Diggory was the only one to die at Hogwarts as a student, and they said that Readathon was written by Michael Paolini at one point in the book. Definitely not Michael Paolini, like literally look, it says Christopher. But it's okay because I still really enjoyed this book. It really gave a lot of insight into the Harry Potter world and it gave a lot of possible explanations about where J.K. Rowling may have gotten some of her inspiration from. One thing that really stood out to me about this book as opposed to other Harry Potter like information books is that this book had what was called tourist tips. Oh, yep, let's see if I can fix this. You can't really see it that well. It had these little things called tourist tips and they basically gave you names of different places that were somehow related to the Harry Potter series. Sometimes they weren't like the most obvious places in the world, but it was cool to have those tourist tips ideas also because I really want to travel Europe more. So it gave me some ideas of places to potentially travel in the future. And then at like 2 a.m. on the Sunday, and the prompts came out midday on Sunday, I was like, I'm just gonna go back and double check and make sure that I did all of the prompts correctly, and then I realized, oh shoot, there was actually 2 prompts for week 2. My second prompt for week 2 was read a graphic novel, picture book, or comic book, and since I saw it at 2 a.m. I'm like, okay, I just have to go with the shortest one on my shelf. So I chose this book called Fame. I think the full name is Fame, Suzanne Collins. Also, is it Suzanne or Susan? I think it's Suzanne. Suzanne, not 100% sure. This book is very short and it's essentially just giving an overview on Suzanne Collins' life before the Hunger Games, where her inspiration came for the Hunger Games and for Gregor the Overlander. Just gave a nice insight into her life. It's interesting because I wouldn't normally think that a comic book would be the route to go for a sort of biography about her, but it actually worked pretty well. Although my edition had something really weird about it, I still gave it 5 stars because I still really enjoyed it. But there's literally a text box right there that the information was cut off, and I don't know why. I don't know if maybe I got like a weird edition, or maybe I was like scammed. I don't know, I'm so confused. I have no clue why I can't read that full box and why it was cut off, but it's okay because I still mostly got the information and it was still really enjoyable. For week 3, the first prompt I got was a book that is paranormal or has a ghost in it. For that, I chose Any Blue Velvet Dress by Catherine Sefton. This book is essentially about this girl who her parents go on a big vacation and they leave her behind and drop her off at like a friend's house. But there's a mix-up and she ends up without books. She's a massive book reader and so she doesn't have anything to read, and that's sort of really sad. And she all of a sudden starts to see books appearing in the middle of the night in her room and she's not really sure where they come from or why they're there or anything like that, but it gives her something to read. Pretty interesting premise. I forget if I gave this 1 or 2 stars, don't remember off the top of my head. Check my Goodreads in case you're interested. I didn't really like the writing style that much. It just didn't interest me all that much, even though the premise sounded really interesting. But yeah, this is a kid's book. My next prompt was a book with a female protagonist. For this one, I chose the second book in the Witch series. And the second book is called The Disappearance, and it is by Elizabeth Lenhard. This was very nostalgic to read. I believe I give it 3 out of 5 stars. When I was younger, I loved the Witch series a lot. I remember getting the toys from McDonald's, and that's how it sort of like clued me in on this series, and then I read the graphic novels when I was younger. And I bought a bunch of the books in the series but haven't really read most of them, which follows 5 girls who are friends and they are given magical powers. They each can control an element and one of them is a leader. The world is sort of split into 2 universes. So there's our universe that we're living in, and then there's these portals that monsters are getting out of that this other universe is in. And their job is to sort of like stop the monsters from going into the world. And then I'm showing you the background now because when they use their powers, they transform into these fairy-like people. Let me fix that lighting. Ta-da! Turn into like fairy-like people. It's a very unique series because it definitely has like the idea of a different universe, and the idea of elemental powers have been done before, but the way that it talks about it and does it is a really unique way. I really enjoyed this series when I was younger. It was really nostalgic reading it. I don't enjoy it as much now as I enjoyed it in the past, but it still was pretty enjoyable. For week 4 and 5, I got 3 prompts for each week, which was a little bit like anxiety provoking for me, I want to say, just because I'm a slow reader, as I've already said. But I did succeed and I'm proud of myself for doing so well during this readathon. So for week 4, I got a book that starts with the letter S. For this, I chose Shiloh by Phyllis Reynolds Naylor. I hated this book and I gave it 1 out of 5 stars. It basically deals with a lot of animal abuse and it mentions abuse from a father to his son. It's a very heavy topic. I didn't like the writing style and I'm confused why it's a kid's book because I feel like that topic would be really difficult for some kids to read. My next prompt was pick 5 to 7 books, lay them around in a circle, then like spin around, and whichever one you land on is the one that you get to read. So I did that with a bunch of books on my shelf, and the one that I landed in front of was The World of the Hunger Games by, oh my gosh, who's it by? By Kate Egan. This book is essentially similar to the Harry Potter book that I showed earlier in the sense that it's not like part of the main series, but it definitely goes into more stuff from the series. This one wasn't as in-depth as the Harry Potter one, but I still gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It's a really nice overview of the first book if you haven't read the first book in a while. And then the third prompt was read a book recommended by someone else or a friend or even from a bookstagrammer. That's not the exact wording because I remember it being a little different. I have a ton of anxiety about messaging people. I don't know why. I'm trying to work on it. Can't really figure out how to work on it without a therapist, but struggling to find one of those. But anyways, I just logged into my bookstagram and I was looking through the accounts that I follow and I was trying to find one that posted a book that I owned, and I did find one. I was originally going to be reading This Savage Song for this one because a bookstagrammer that I follow posted about it, but that one was a little too long and I wasn't sure if I would be able to finish it in time. So I actually found that a bookstagrammer that I followed posted about Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Roald Dahl, so I read this book. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. I can see why the Oompa Loompas were very problematic, I'd say, in the way that they were dealt with and talked about, but I did overall enjoy this book. It was very magical, and after finally reading this, I sort of felt like both of the movies are very good representations of the magic and the fun that's in the book. Now on to the final week. So the first prompt from the final week for me was read a book from your topmost shelf. So I pulled one off of my topmost shelf and I got Train Plus Train or Train and Train by Hideyuki Kurata. I probably butchered their name, sorry, but this book was a 5-star read for me. It is a manga. Based on the description of the book, I wasn't sure if I was going to enjoy it or not, but I did end up really enjoying it. This manga centers around a world where there's trains and people can go to school on trains. And there's like a normal train and there's a more like advanced, more risky, special train. And there's 2 main characters. This character right here is on the run and she's trying to join the special train. This character right here is trying to join the normal train because he's a very normal and simple guy. But some things come up and they go on this little adventure. I really hope to be finishing the rest of this series at some point soon. But I was looking and it doesn't look like they're producing new copies of it, so I have to buy it used from Amazon, which is a little annoying, but I really enjoyed this. I really recommend going into this not knowing much about it. I highly recommend this if you like manga. Next up is the first book you think of. When the week 5 prompt came out, I had just seen Star Wars, Rise of the Skywalker, and because of that, Star Wars was on my brain, and because of Rise of the Skywalker's connection to Revenge of the Sith, which isn't really a big spoiler, I'm not going to talk about what that connection is, but there is a connection. So the first thing I thought of with books that I own is, oh, I own this novelization that I never read. This is the Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith novelization. It is by Patricia C. Read. This is essentially just the third Star Wars movie written in a kids novelization format thingy. It really didn't do much for me. It did differ a little bit from the movie, but not too much. I mean, there is like one deleted scene from the movie that they for sure included in here. I looked it up, it is a deleted scene. That definitely changes things a little bit. But other than that, this wasn't really worth reading. I didn't like the writing style at all. And I loved the prequels when I was younger, but now that I was reading this, I'm like, nothing really big happened in Revenge of the Sith until the very end of the movie. And Anakin was literally like pissing me off in this book. He was acting like a 3-year-old. Yikes. I believe I gave the book like 1 out of 5 stars or 2 out of 5 stars. I don't remember. Why am I having a hard time remembering star ratings right now? Normally I'm good at this. And on to my last book, and the prompt simply just said one shorter than the other book that you read. So, the Star Wars book was 185 pages long. And so I read this one, Inside Divergent: The Initiate's World, and this is by Cecilia Bernard. Cecilia Bernard. I can talk. I think that's right. This book was about 142 pages, so it was definitely shorter than this one. This book is very similar to the Hunger Games book that I showed earlier in the sense that it's just like an overview of the first book. It gave more information than the movie gave, and it had tons of pictures from the movie. It was really enjoyable. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. As I said with the Hunger Games book, this is definitely a good review of the first book / movie. So that's all for today's video. I hope you really enjoyed. I will be linking all of Book Gross and the Magical Readathon social media down in the description below, so you can check out her next readathon. If you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate it if you consider liking this video and subscribing. If you participated in this readathon, feel free to comment down below with your favorite book that you read. Until next time, bye!